8-year-old girl hurt by stepfather. Bikers stormed a hospital to protect a girl. The hospital doors locked at 2:17 a.m. An 8-year-old girl lay in room 314 with fingerprints on her arms and fear in her eyes. Down the highway, engines were already starting. By sunrise, the man who hurt her would realize something terrifying. She wasn't alone anymore. The phone call came while the city slept. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, just a soft vibration on a wooden nightstand in a small house outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. Caleb Ridge Turner opened one eye and reached for it. Former Army mechanic, 42 years old, broad shoulders, quiet voice, president of a small veterans motorcycle club called Iron Legacy. Ridge speaking. The woman on the other end sounded like she had been crying, but didn't have time to cry anymore. My name is Laura Bennett. I'm a pediatric social worker at St. Francis Children's Hospital. I was told you help children. Ridge sat up slowly. What kind of help? Silence. Then, an 8-year-old girl, Lily Harper, possible abuse. Her stepfather says she fell down the stairs. Ridge's jaw tightened. And you don't believe him? No, Laura whispered. Neither does the ER doctor. Ridge swung his legs off the bed. How bad? She has a cracked rib, bruises in different stages of healing. And, Laura swallowed, burn marks. The room went very still. Her mother, Ridge asked, passed away last year. Car accident. The stepfather, Daniel Harper, is her legal guardian. He's already here. He's pushing for discharge in the morning. Ridge stood up. How long do you have? If I can't convince the hospital board to hold her, she goes home by noon. Ridge walked into the hallway and stared at a framed photo on the wall. A younger version of himself. Army fatigues, arm around his best friend, Marcus Hale. Marcus had died overseas 12 years ago. Before deployment, Marcus had made Ridge promise something simple. If anything ever happens to me, look out for kids who don't have someone. Ridge exhaled slowly. I'll be there before sunrise, he said. Mr. Turner, Laura added carefully, I was told if you come, you don't come alone. Ridge looked out the window at the dark street. No, ma'am, he replied quietly, we don't. And in that quiet house, one engine turned over, then another, and another. By morning, the hospital parking lot would sound like thunder. Ridge didn't send a long message. He sent 3 words to the Iron Legacy group chat. 8-year-old girl. That was all. Within seconds, replies came in. How far? Hospital. Who hurt her? The time we rolling. Iron Legacy wasn't what people imagined when they heard bikers. They were mechanics, teachers, plumbers, nurses. Veterans who found peace in the hum of engines and the brotherhood of shared scars. There was Big Tom, 6'4" with a gray beard and a laugh that shook walls. Mason, a high school history teacher who rode a beat-up Harley older than his students. Elijah, former Marine, quiet as stone. And Rosa, everyone called her Mama Rose, retired trauma nurse, 70 years old, sharper than any of them. Ridge called Tom first. Tom answered on the first ring. How bad? Cracked rib. Burns. Tom didn't speak for a second. Address. St. Francis Children's. Tulsa. I'll fuel up. Ridge hung up and dialed Mama Rose. Tell me she's breathing, Mama Rose said before he could speak. She is. Then we ride. Within 30 minutes, engines were warming in driveways across the city. Ridge pulled on his worn leather vest. The Iron Legacy patch was stitched across the back, an eagle with spread wings, talons gripping a broken chain. He stepped outside. The air was cold, still dark. As he mounted his bike, his neighbor's porch light flicked on. Mrs. Donnelly, 82 years old, peered out. Everything all right, Caleb? He paused. Not yet, he said. By 4:45 a.m., 27 motorcycles gathered at a gas station off Route 66. 27. Ridge counted them slowly. 27 men and women who understood something simple. When a child is afraid, you don't wait for permission. Tom rolled up beside him. Plan. We show up, Ridge said. We stay calm, we stay legal, but we don't leave. And the stepfather, Ridge's eyes hardened. If he shows up, he walks through us. The engines roared to life. The sun had not yet risen, but thunder was already moving toward the hospital. At 5:32 a.m., Lily Harper woke up screaming, not loud, just a small, broken sound that didn't belong in a hospital room. Nurse Emily rushed in. Hey, sweetheart, it's okay. Lily's eyes darted around the room like something was hiding in the corners. Is he here? She whispered. Emily knelt beside the bed. No, you're safe right now. Lily flinched when Emily adjusted the blanket. Even gentle hands scared her. Her small arms were covered in bruises, yellow fading into purple, purple fading into blue. A story written in skin. On the chair in the corner sat a stuffed rabbit with one ear torn. Emily had brought it from the gift shop. Lily hadn't touched it. In the hallway, Daniel Harper stood with crossed arms and a clean-shaven jaw, early 30s. Well-dressed, controlled. He looked like a man who coached Little League and waved at neighbors. "I don't understand why she's still admitted," he told the charge nurse. "She's dramatic. She fell downstairs, kids bruised." "But, sir," the nurse said carefully, "the doctors are still evaluating." Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I have work. She has school. This is unnecessary." Behind him, Laura Bennett, the social worker, watched quietly. She had seen too many men like him, polished on the outside, storms behind closed doors. Daniel leaned closer to Laura. "You're making a mistake. You'll ruin my reputation." Laura met his stare. "If I'm wrong, you'll recover," she said softly. "If I'm right, she won't." At 6:10 a.m., the hospital windows trembled. Not from wind, from engines, deep, rolling, steady. Nurses moved toward the lobby windows. Patients' families stepped into the hallway. Daniel turned. The sound grew louder. 27 motorcycles turning into the hospital entrance like a wave of steel and leather. They parked in formation. Engines cut. Silence followed, heavy and electric. Ridge removed his helmet. He looked up at the hospital sign, then at the entrance doors. Tom stepped beside him. "Let's go meet a little girl," Ridge said. Inside room 314, Lily stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, she didn't know help was coming. But it was, and it had arrived loud enough for the whole city to hear. The hospital lobby had never felt smaller. 27 bikers walked in quietly. No shouting, no threats, just boots against tile and leather against morning air. Heads turned. Parents holding sick children stiffened at first. A security guard stepped forward, uncertain. Ridge removed his gloves slowly and approached the front desk. "We're here for Lily Harper," he said calmly. "You can't all go upstairs," the receptionist replied, nervous but polite. "We don't need to," Mama Rose added gently. "We'll wait." Behind them, Daniel Harper stepped out of the elevator. His face changed when he saw the crowd. "What is this?" he snapped. "Is this some kind of circus?" Ridge turned toward him. "No, sir," he said evenly. "This is support." But Daniel scoffed. "For who? My daughter." The word asterisk, my asterisk, landed wrong. Laura Bennett walked into the lobby just then, her eyes widening slightly at the sight. "You came," she whispered to Ridge. "We said we would." But Daniel pointed toward them. "You called them. This is intimidation." Laura didn't flinch. "They're standing in a public lobby." Security approached Ridge. "Sir, as long as there's no disruption." "There won't be," Ridge assured him. The bikers moved toward the walls, forming a quiet line. Not blocking, not shouting, just present. Daniel's jaw flexed. He looked around at 27 calm, steady faces. "You people don't know anything," he said. "She's clumsy. She falls. She exaggerates." Tom took one slow step forward. "She fall onto a lighter too?" he asked quietly. Daniel's eyes flickered. For a second, just one, something cracked. Upstairs, Lily heard something unfamiliar. A low rumble earlier, now silence, but it felt different, less empty. Nurse Emily leaned closer to her. "Sweetheart, there are some people downstairs." Lily's small fingers tightened around the blanket. "Is it him?" "No," Emily said softly. "Not him." In the lobby, Daniel pulled out his phone. "You'll regret this," he muttered. Ridge met his stare. "No," Ridge replied, "you will." The tension hung thick. No one moved. No one blinked. And for the first time since Lily had been admitted, Daniel Harper looked nervous. At 7:15 a.m., a black SUV pulled into the hospital entrance. Out stepped a man in a pressed suit carrying a leather briefcase. Daniel's attorney. He walked through the lobby, barely glancing at the bikers. "This is unnecessary drama," he told the administrator who had just arrived. "My client has full custody. There is no police report, no charges." Laura stood her ground. "There are medical findings," she said. The administrator looked overwhelmed. "We cannot hold a child without legal cause." Ridge stepped forward slightly. "Then get legal cause." The attorney turned toward him. "And you are?" "But no one important," Ridge answered. "Just someone who keeps promises." The lawyer smirked. "This isn't a movie. You can't storm in here and play hero." Ridge didn't react. Tom crossed his arms. Mama Rose stepped closer to Laura and whispered, "What do you need?" Laura swallowed. "Time. I need a judge to review emergency protective custody. I need documentation signed before noon." "How long?" "2 hours, maybe 3. Ridge nodded once. "You've got it." The attorney leaned toward Daniel. "Ignore them. This is noise." But it wasn't noise. It was presence. At 8:02 a.m., more motorcycles rolled in, not from Iron Legacy. Word had spread. Other veterans, friends of friends. By 8:30, there were 43 bikes outside. No one had planned that. Inside room 314, Lily sat up slowly. She heard the engines again. This time she walked to the window, carefully. Her rib hurt when she moved. She peeked through the blinds. Motorcycles, rows of them, men and women standing below. One of them looked up, Elijah. He didn't smile. He just placed his hand over his heart. Lily didn't understand why, but she felt something shift. For months, the world had been a locked door. Now, it felt like someone was standing on the other side, guarding it. Back in the lobby, Daniel's confidence was thinning. "This is harassment," he insisted. Ridge tilted his head slightly. "No," he said quietly, "this is accountability." The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. 9:00 a.m., 1 hour closer to noon, 1 hour closer to either safety or disaster. At 9:17 a.m., the first police cruiser arrived, then another. 2 officers stepped inside, hands resting near their belts. Daniel straightened immediately. "Officers," he said loudly, "these people are threatening me." Ridge didn't move. The lead officer scanned the room. "They causing trouble?" he asked the security guard. "No, sir," the guard admitted. "They've been calm." The officer approached Ridge. "You organizing this?" "Yes." "You plan to leave when the child is safe?" The officer studied him carefully. "You understand we can't allow intimidation?" Ridge nodded. "Neither can we." A long pause. The officer turned to Daniel. "Sir, unless they break a law, they're allowed to stand here." Daniel's face flushed red. "This is ridiculous." Behind him, the elevator doors opened. Laura stepped out holding a folder. Her hands trembled. Ridge noticed immediately. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "They found older fractures," she whispered. 2 months old. "Never reported." Daniel's voice rose. "That's speculation." The attorney tried to regain control. "We demand immediate discharge." Mama Rose stepped forward. "You don't demand anything when a child's bones tell a different story." The room froze. Upstairs, Lily sat on her bed, listening to footsteps in the hallway. She heard raised voices. She curled inward. When Daniel got angry, things broke. Doors, plates, sometimes her. She closed her eyes. Then she heard something else. A knock, soft. Emily stepped in with the stuffed rabbit. "There are some people downstairs," she said gently. "They came just for you." Lily looked confused. "Why?" Emily hesitated. "Because someone told them you matter." Downstairs, tension thickened. The administrator received a call. He answered quietly, listened, then looked up. "There will be an emergency hearing at 11, he announced. Laura exhaled shakily. Daniel's attorney stiffened. "That's unnecessary." "It's happening," the administrator said. Ridge finally allowed himself one slow breath. 2 more hours. But as Daniel locked eyes with him, there was something dark there. Not fear, not yet. Anger, and anger made dangerous men unpredictable. At 10:04 a.m., rain began to fall. Soft at first, then steady. The bikers didn't move. Water-soaked leather. Helmets rested beside boots. No one complained. Inside, Daniel paced. "You're ruining her life," he hissed toward Laura. "Foster care, strangers, that's better." Laura didn't respond, because she had seen worse than strangers. She had seen homes where children prayed for strangers. Ridge stepped outside briefly. Rain ran down his face. Tom joined him. "You think the judge will side with us?" Ridge stared at the hospital windows. "I think the truth will." Upstairs, Lily held the stuffed rabbit for the first time. She sat by the window again. Rain blurred the motorcycles, but they were still there, still standing. One biker, Rosa, removed her vest and draped it over a younger rider's shoulders who looked cold. Small acts, quiet ones. Lily pressed her palm against the glass. Down below, Elijah looked up again. This time he gave a small nod, not dramatic, just steady, like a promise. Back in the lobby, Daniel's phone buzzed. He answered sharply. "What do you mean they're reviewing the autopsy?" Laura froze. "Autopsy?" Daniel's eyes darted around the room. "My wife's accident was closed," he snapped into the phone. Ridge caught the shift. "What accident?" he asked calmly. Daniel hung up. "None of your business." "But it was." "Because sometimes abuse doesn't start with a child. Sometimes it starts long before." At 10:42 a.m. the rain stopped. The clouds parted slightly. Sunlight touched the chrome of the motorcycles. The lobby doors opened again. A woman stepped inside, mid-30s, tearful, determined. "I'm Lily's aunt," she said, and suddenly the story grew bigger than one hospital room. Her name was Hannah Collins. She hadn't been allowed to see Lily in months. "Daniel said it upset her," Hannah explained, voice shaking. "But I knew something wasn't right." She held photos in her hand, pictures from last summer. Lily smiling, no bruises, then one from 3 months ago, a shadow behind her eyes. Laura took the photos carefully. "These help," she whispered. Daniel stepped forward. "She's unstable. We cut contact for a reason." Hannah's voice broke. "The reason is you." Silence slammed into the lobby. The police officers shifted uncomfortably. Ridge watched Daniel carefully. For the first time, Daniel looked cornered. At 11:00 a.m., the emergency hearing began via video conference in a small administrative room. Laura, the administrator, Daniel and his attorney, Hannah and Ridge standing quietly in the back. The judge's face appeared on the screen. "State your concern." Laura laid out the injuries, the old fractures, the burn marks, the inconsistencies. Daniel's attorney argued lack of proof. Then Hannah spoke. "She stopped calling me," Hannah said. "She used to tell me everything. Then she got quiet. She said she falls a lot now. 8-year-olds don't fall that much." The judge turned to Daniel. "Sir, can you explain the prior injuries?" Daniel's composure cracked. "She's dramatic. She lies." Ridge felt something cold settle in his chest. "Children don't invent fear like that." The judge leaned forward. "Until a full investigation is complete, temporary protective custody is granted. The child will not be discharged to Mr. Harper." The room went still. Daniel stood abruptly. "You can't do this." "But it was already done." Outside, the news spread quietly through the bikers. Tom looked at Ridge. "She's staying." Ridge nodded once. Upstairs, Laura entered room 314. She knelt beside Lily. "You're not going home with him today," she said gently. Lily didn't smile. She just breathed for the first time in a long time. Down in the lobby, Daniel was escorted out. He locked eyes with Ridge one last time. This wasn't over, not legally, not emotionally. But as the doors closed behind him, 43 bikers stood tall. Because sometimes protection doesn't look like fists. Sometimes it looks like staying. And for Lily Harper, they had stayed. The hospital felt different after the ruling. Not louder, not celebratory, just lighter, like the air had been holding its breath and finally let go. Outside, the bikers didn't cheer. They didn't clap. Ridge had asked them not to. "This isn't victory," he told them quietly. "This is step one." They nodded, because they understood something most people didn't. Protection is not a moment. It's a commitment. Inside, Daniel was arguing with the officers near the exit. "You can't keep me from my daughter." One officer spoke calmly. "Sir, the court order is temporary. You'll have your hearing. But right now you need to leave." Daniel's eyes burned with humiliation. His lawyer whispered urgently beside him, trying to contain the damage. As the doors shut behind him, the lobby seemed to exhale. Upstairs, Lily sat on the edge of her bed while Laura adjusted the chair across from her. "There's something I want to ask you," Laura said gently. "You don't have to answer if you're not ready." Lily looked down at her small hands. "Did anyone else ever see him hurt you?" The question hung between them. For a long time, Lily said nothing. Then, almost too quiet to hear, "The walls!" Laura swallowed hard. "The walls, they hear," Lily whispered. "They just don't tell." Laura felt tears rise but held steady. "Lily, there are people downstairs. They came because someone told them you needed help." Lily's brow furrowed. Why would they care? It wasn't bitterness. It was confusion. Laura took a breath. Because sometimes strangers decide to become something better. Lily slid off the bed slowly and walked to the window again. Her ribs still hurt. Every step reminded her of that night. She pushed the blinds open just a little. The motorcycles were still there. Ridge stood with Tom near the entrance, speaking quietly. Elijah leaned against his bike, arms folded. Mama Rose was handing out bottled water from a saddlebag. They weren't leaving. Lily pressed her hand to the glass. Down below, Ridge looked up. He didn't wave. He just nodded once, steady. Lily didn't smile, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. By early afternoon, reporters began to arrive. Not many, just 2 local news vans that had caught wind of bikers surrounding a hospital. Cameras pointed, microphones adjusted. A young reporter approached Ridge cautiously. "Sir, are you leading this group?" Ridge looked at the motorcycles behind him. "No," he said, "we're just standing." "Standing for what?" "For a child who can't stand up for herself yet." The reporter hesitated. "Are you accusing the stepfather of something?" Ridge's voice stayed calm. "I'm saying a little girl deserves to feel safe." Inside, Daniel watched the news coverage from his SUV parked across the street. His jaw tightened as he saw the image, rows of bikers, quiet and unmovable. He dialed someone. "You need to fix this," he snapped. "They're turning this into a circus." But something had shifted. This wasn't a circus. It was exposure. Upstairs, Hannah sat beside Lily's bed, brushing hair gently from her forehead. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner," Hannah whispered. Lily stared at the ceiling. "He said you didn't want me." Hannah's hand froze. "Oh, baby, I always wanted you." Silence filled the space between them, a kind of silence that holds both pain and healing. A knock sounded at the door. Laura stepped in. "There's someone who'd like to say hello, only if you want." Lily's shoulders tensed. "Is it him?" "No!" Laura stepped aside. Mama Rose entered first without her vest, just a soft cardigan over her shirt. She moved slowly, like she was walking into church. "Hi there, Miss Lily," she said gently. "I'm Rose." Lily studied her. "You ride a motorcycle?" Rose smiled faintly. "I do, but I also used to be a nurse." Lily's eyes flickered. "A real one? A very real one?" Rose sat down carefully. "We just wanted you to know something." Lily waited. "You are not in trouble," Rose said softly. "None of this is your fault." And something inside Lily cracked. Not loudly, just enough for one tear to slip down her cheek. Hannah pulled her close. Outside, Ridge watched the window of room 314. He couldn't hear what was being said, but he saw Lily lean into someone's arms, and he knew this wasn't just about stopping harm, it was about starting repair. At 3:40 p.m., another call came. Laura answered it in the hallway. She listened. Her face changed. Ridge saw it immediately. "What is it?" he asked. "They're reopening the investigation into the mother's accident," she said quietly. Ridge's stomach tightened. "Why?" "There were inconsistencies. The medical examiner wants another look." Across town, Daniel received the same news. His control began to unravel. He drove back toward the hospital, not to enter, but to watch. Inside, Lily had fallen asleep for the first time without waking in panic. Hannah sat beside her, holding her hand. Mama Rose stood quietly near the window. "She's exhausted," Rose whispered. Hannah nodded. "She hasn't slept through a night in months." Rose's jaw tightened. "I've seen that before." Downstairs, Ridge gathered the bikers. "We rotate shifts," he said. "Half go home, half stay." Tom frowned. "For how long?" "As long as it takes." No one argued, because the mission had grown beyond one morning. At 5:12 p.m., Daniel stepped out of his SUV and approached the parking lot. He didn't get far. 43 bikers turned their heads at the same time, not aggressive, just aware. Daniel stopped. He felt it then, not fear of violence, but fear of witnesses. He turned around, got back in his vehicle, and drove away. Inside, Lily stirred in her sleep. She whispered something. Hannah leaned closer. "What is it, sweetheart?" Lily's voice was barely audible. "They didn't leave." Hannah's eyes filled. "No," she whispered back, "they didn't." Outside, the sun began to set. Chrome reflected orange light. Engines cooled. Ridge leaned against his bike and looked up at the hospital windows glowing in evening gold. Marcus's voice echoed in his memory. "Look out for kids who don't have someone." Ridge closed his eyes briefly. "She's got someone now," he murmured, and this time he wasn't alone in keeping that promise. Night settled slowly over the hospital. Most of the reporters had gone. The rain-washed pavement reflected streetlights and rows of parked motorcycles. Half the riders headed home to rest. The other half stayed. Ridge stayed. Inside, Lily woke just after 9 p.m. The room was dim, quiet. For a moment, panic tried to rise. Then she remembered. She turned toward the window. The motorcycles were still there, smaller in the dark, but present. Hannah slept in the chair beside her bed, head tilted gently. Lily slid out of bed and walked carefully to the glass. Her reflection looked different somehow, still bruised, still small, but not alone. Downstairs, Ridge looked up at the building again the way he had all day. And then he saw her, a tiny silhouette in the window. He straightened, removed his helmet slowly, and placed his hand over his heart. Lily hesitated. Then she lifted her small hand too, pressing it against the glass. It wasn't dramatic, no music, no speeches, just a quiet exchange across distance. Protection doesn't always roar, sometimes it waits. At 9:37 p.m., Laura received confirmation. Temporary custody would extend pending full investigation. Daniel Harper would not be permitted unsupervised contact. Laura closed her eyes in relief. When she told Hannah, Hannah began to cry silently. Lily didn't fully understand legal terms, but she understood tone. And she understood that tonight no one was coming through the door angry. Outside, engines didn't start. They didn't need to, because the message had already been delivered. You are seen, you are protected, you are not alone. And under the hospital lights, 43 bikers stood guard, not as heroes, not as headlines, but as witnesses to a little girl learning what safety feels like, for the first time in a very long time. The second morning felt different, not urgent, not chaotic, just steady. Sunlight rose slowly over the hospital parking lot, catching the chrome of the motorcycles that had never left. Some riders stretched stiff backs. Others sipped coffee from paper cups. No one complained about the cold night air. Inside, Lily woke to the smell of pancakes, not hospital pancakes, real ones. Mama Rose had convinced the cafeteria cook to let her help. "You can't fix everything," she had said softly, tying an apron around her waist. "But you can make breakfast." When Lily saw the plate, she stared at it like it was something fragile. "For me?" she asked. "For you," Rose smiled. Hannah sat beside her, brushing Lily's hair gently. "You slept all night," Hannah whispered. Lily nodded slowly. "I had a dream," she said. "What about?" "There were loud bikes," she replied, "but they weren't scary." Downstairs, Ridge stood with Laura as she reviewed paperwork. "What happens now?" he asked. "CPS will begin formal investigation. Your presence helped more than you know," she admitted. The hospital felt supported. Ridge nodded once. He didn't need credit. He needed outcome. Across town, investigators visited the site of the mother's accident. Old reports were pulled, photographs reviewed, questions reopened. Daniel Harper sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. No control, no audience, just silence. And silence can be louder than engines. Back at the hospital, Lily asked something unexpected. "Will they leave now?" Ridge happened to be in the hallway when she asked it. He stepped into the doorway gently. "We won't leave until you feel okay," he said. Lily studied him. "You don't even know me." Ridge's eyes softened. "I don't have to." There was no dramatic music, no applause. Just a quiet understanding passing between a man who had once failed to keep a promise in time and a child who needed someone to keep one now. Outside, more bikes arrived that morning, not to protest, not to threaten, just to witness. Because sometimes protection is loud, but sometimes it's patient. 3 days later, Lily was discharged, not into Daniel's custody, but into Hannah's, temporary placement, court-supervised, monitored. When the decision came through, Hannah covered her mouth and cried openly. Lily didn't cry, she just held her aunt's hand tighter. In the lobby, the bikers gathered one last time, not as a wall, but as a path. 2 lines formed from the hospital doors to Hannah's car. No engines running, no noise, just stillness. Hospital staff stood quietly along the sides, watching. Laura wiped her eyes. Ridge removed his vest before Lily walked out. He didn't want the leather to feel intimidating. When Lily stepped through the doors, sunlight hit her face. She squinted slightly. Her rib was healing, bruises fading, but the fear in her posture had softened. She paused when she saw the 2 rows of bikers. "Are they mad?" she whispered. Hannah knelt beside her. "No, sweetheart, they're proud." Lily walked slowly between them. As she passed, each rider placed a hand over their heart. No one reached for her, no one overwhelmed her, just presence. When she reached Ridge at the end of the line, she stopped. "Are you going to ride loud again?" she asked quietly. He smiled just a little. "Only if you want us to." She thought about that, then nodded once. "Okay." Hannah opened the car door. Before getting in, Lily turned back. For a second, she looked like any other 8-year-old girl, small, unsure. Then she did something none of them expected. She lifted her chin and waved, not timid, not afraid, just certain. The engine started after the car pulled away, not aggressive, not angry, but proud, and Daniel Harper watched it all from a distance, alone, because control had finally slipped, and witnesses had taken its place. Months passed. The investigation deepened. The reopened case into Lily's mother revealed what many had feared, brake line damage that had not been accidental. Charges were filed. Daniel Harper was arrested quietly one Thursday afternoon. No spectacle, no engines, just handcuffs and consequences. Ridge received the call while working in his garage. He leaned against his workbench and closed his eyes. Not relief, not celebration, just closure. Later that week, a small envelope arrived at the Iron Legacy Clubhouse. Inside was a drawing, stick figures on motorcycles, a small girl standing between them. Above it, in uneven handwriting, "Thank you for not leaving." The room went silent as Ridge held it up. Big Tom cleared his throat roughly. Mama Rose wiped her eyes without apology. Elijah simply nodded once. Weeks later, Lily visited the clubhouse with Hannah. She walked through the door without flinching. That was the first miracle. The second was when she asked if she could sit on one of the bikes. Ridge lifted her carefully onto his motorcycle. She gripped the handlebars, not scared, curious. "You know," Ridge said softly, "these things are loud." Lily smiled. "Not anymore." Outside, the sun dipped low. Engines rested. The broken chains stitched on their backs felt lighter somehow, because the promise wasn't just about one child. It was about showing up, about standing when it's easier to scroll past, about becoming someone's safety when they don't have one. Lily didn't need heroes, she needed witnesses. And on a quiet hospital morning, 43 of them answered, not with fists, not with threats, but with presence. And sometimes that's enough. If this story moved you, share where you're watching from and tell us someone who once stood up for you. Like, subscribe, and press the bell so you never miss stories that remind us we're not alone. Because sometimes showing up can change everything.